We all have heard a lot about how a lot of companies do their strategy and they do innovation and they try to create future. They sit down in a room, they get pinboards, they put ideas, they start doing things, they create the product, they sell it, they put it out to the market. Pretty interesting. That's how they do future. Sometimes you will also see that when you're talking about cities. So city development goes about looking at the needs and the requirements of the people and the inhabitants of that area and creating the services and the things that they might need to learn, educate themselves, have free time, and be on about it their own. But a lot of these things, talking about the future and developing that future, nobody has ever told you that you could do that for yourself as a person. When we hear about this and we think about your future, you've never really thought about what does this mean? And if you think about what the future means for yourself, it's just basically your life ahead. It's nothing more than that. And you can give parameters to that. You can say, well, I would like my future to be like this in education, like this in my personal life, or like this in my finances, or whatever you want to be. You can give those parameters that you want to your life. And maybe you think that the future is something kind of strange and unattainable to try to reach. Why? Because a lot of the things that we do, we learn basically on how we go through education. We learn how to educate ourselves. We learn about life through life experiences. But nobody has really sat down and given you the time to teach you about your future. And I bet you're wondering right now, well, this is kind of difficult. Nobody really, that's an area that nobody has ever talked to me about. I have no clue how to deal with my own future. But if you think about it, we manage quite a lot of other things. We manage our finances, our friendships, our energy, careers, lifestyle, houses, families. We manage a lot of things, even our time. But why not think about managing our future? And maybe what I just told you right now tells you, well, you know, I can't really deal with that. I can't really relate because nobody has ever taught me this. So I'm going to make it even more difficult for you to think about how to manage your future. And the first thing that we're going to look at is 3 facts about why the future is so difficult to manage. And the first one is quantifiable data about the future does not exist. If you think about it, and if we all knew what's going to happen tomorrow, then we would know exactly those stock prices that we're going to buy at, and when to exit and when to enter, and the lottery numbers, and we will all be millionaires. But that doesn't happen that way. The future doesn't work like this. Quantifiable data we will have from the past up to the present point, and everything else into the future is an extrapolation, and try not to confuse that with actual numbers for tomorrow. A second fact about the future is that we always know in hindsight. Pretty easy, right? How many times have you said, man, I should have done that. I should have bought those lottery numbers. That was it. That was the right thing that I should have done. Or, oh, I should have taken that job. Or I should have married that person. Sometimes maybe you say, good, I didn't. And with this, you also think about it, and you always think about, well, how is life actually set up? Life is set up pretty easily. We usually go through it, and when we look at the past, we look at a straight line of causalities that have brought us to the point of today. We were born, we went to school, we learned how to fly a plane, and today we're a pilot. It sounds easy, right? When you look backwards. But you don't see all of the other possibilities that you said no to. When you look at the future goes in a different way. It's like branches of a tree. You have all these possibilities that are out there, and you can only make them certain until the point that you decide to do that. Where am I going to go on vacation? I can go to the beach, I can go to the mountains, I can stay at home. So, we all know better always in hindsight. And finally, the third fact to make it even more difficult for you is that there is not only one future, but multiple futures. Let's go back to that image of branches of a tree. You have a lot of possibilities. You can do many, many different things, and you will only make them true until the point of certainty. So that's why in a lot of the future strategic foresight topics that companies deal with, they talk about futures. They talk about a multiplicity of possibilities. Now let's say that I kind of brought your mind to say, well, I can't really do that. The next question that I imagine that are in minds like yourselves is, how do I actually do that? And even why should I even do that? But before I tell you those two answers to those questions of why you should do it and how you should do it, I would just tell you a little bit of a story about my future. In the late part of my teens, I was studying in my home country of Venezuela. I was studying engineering. And at that point in time, with still a couple of years ahead to finish my engineering career, or my engineering studies, I would start to see what was happening in the country. Things were changing, economy-wise, political-wise, in the society. Exchange rates were going crazy. People were taking against each other just because of political beliefs that they had. They were creating quite a lot of chaos. And I could see all those elements. I started to take these things from the environment. Hey, wow, interesting, that is happening there. Interesting, that is also happening there. And I was starting to create pictures of what I call my future. I wasn't really aware about a lot of the things that were going to happen later on. When I finished university a couple of years later, I started to work. And the reality was that I had a pretty good degree, coming from a really good university. I was bilingual. I was leading a team of engineers. And sadly enough, I had a pretty good job that paid okay, but I could only make it to the end of the month because of my parents. And when you think about these things, it's kind of like a sad moment, because you think, why did I work for all of this to just have this bad situation as my future? So you start to think, well, I do understand a lot of the things that were happening in my environment, but I'm missing something. I was missing actually the action of dealing with these scenarios, these future situations that I was creating, and do something about it. They were always in the back of my head. Look at the situation. Look, it's getting worse. But those weren't the hopes and dreams that I had for me as a future. I didn't want to live in tight quarters with my colleagues. I didn't want to work 7 days a week. I didn't want to get to the end of the month just basically because my parents would help me. So I said, okay, now I need to do something. There's something that I can do. And there is a possibility of things that you can do in that situation. And we can look at it at how do I deal with a situation that I don't quite understand. So let me give you maybe 3 things that will help you try to go through that how of doing it. But before we do that, let's look a second at why. I already kind of said a little bit why I would be in a bad situation if I didn't do certain things. I already described a little bit of my environment. And maybe for you, the question is, why do you even have to deal with my future? Well, if you think about it and you manage so many other things through life, why shouldn't you also deal with your future? It's actually a logical thing that we should do. Even if we know that we can deal with the future, there's a little bit of a disclaimer and a fine print that I want to give you. And this disclaimer and fine print means that even if we sit down and try to manage everything that's ahead of us, it doesn't eliminate 100% the factor of surprise. If we would eliminate surprise, then it wouldn't be fun. Life would be boring and dull, yeah? I think a lot of you might wake up in the morning and say, hey, great, today I'm going to do this, and then your plans changed and you did something else, but then you enjoyed it. If we would plan everything 100%, that would be a pity and a waste of time in life. Nevertheless, it's something that we're not able to do. I already explained why the future can't be foresighted in a complete 100% way. But let's look at 3 questions right now, or 3 things that I would tell you maybe to what I went through as how to design this future. When I look at the how, I look at one thing, my self-inventory. This is a very inward journey. This is yourself dealing with what kind of skills do I have, what do I need, where do I want to go. It's very much about what do you have, what are you missing, and how can you close that gap. The second thing is creating future visions. This is very much about an external element. You're looking at global and you're looking at local situations. You're looking at trends, you're looking at insights, you're looking at influence factors, you're looking at parameters that might be changing, and you're starting to see social media that's going crazy, or you see news at the 9 o'clock evening show, and you start to put these elements and you start to puzzle pieces of how possible futures could look like, and then you start to think about the last thing. My future design. If I already kind of know where the future could go and I have different scenarios, then how can I start to change and work on myself to get to where I want to go in those different situations? So putting it this way, that's kind of how you would build a little bit your own future. And to illustrate this, something happened also to me in when I came to Germany that kind of went through those 3 stages. When I came to Germany, I came with a title from another country. And I didn't want to waste too much time with this homologation process for my degree. So what did I do? I studied in a German university, accredited my current or my previous studies, and then that got me into the labor market pretty fast without going through this tedious long-term process that was going to have. I did all these things very deliberately because I wanted to get through to where I wanted to get to. I didn't want these things to leave me standing in the way. I wanted to have a strategy and not be caught there empty-handed. But I still give you, if you allow me, 3 points of advice when it comes to the future. It's kind of a tricky thing, the future. First thing, adapt. Usually your environment will change. Your persona will change. Your life situation will change. Some other priorities will come in. You will have to change your way along your road and your journey throughout life. You have to adapt. Second, perseverance. It is a hard job to deal with the future. You have to do it every day. You have to make it a habit. How do I deal with this? Every day. It is hard. It is tedious. It is a pain. You have to do it. If you don't just want to continue down the same old road that you were. And finally, also enjoy it a little bit. I said the future can't be planned 100%, but along the way we can enjoy those moments. And there should be some fun in it too. To be honest, a lot of the things that I told you come from my personal life. And you will see that also that nobody will be able to tell you what is the future and how your future will look like. But this type of skill, if you start to develop it with enough time, you will be able to use it for a lot of things. And it's a very, very important skill that we need in the very changing and very volatile, uncertain environment that we live in every single day. Practicing this is also very tricky. Why? Because the future and the past are in a causal loop of a paradox. The things that you learn from your past will help you to do the things in the future. But if in the future you only do the things that you did in your past, you will have the same past and the same future at the same time. Nothing will change. So be careful with that. It is a bit of a trick, but it is a paradox and you have to solve it. Sometimes you have to say no to the old, yes to the new. And with these thoughts, I hope you have a better future that's the one that you want and the one that you want to achieve. Thank you very much.